Hi students, I just wanted to work through the Apply Your Knowledge end of chapter lab for Module 2. I understand we've had some issues and I want to make sure that we're clear on what we're doing. Please remember that this is just a good faith effort on these. Hopefully you have worked through the practice lab, the Pratt and Associates practice lab that was in the chapter itself, and then that will help you complete the end of chapter labs for homework. So the first thing I'm going to do is open Access, and I am going to open the Apply Friendly Janitorial Services database that we have. So I need to go to wherever that is saved, and I have that in my DBA 110 Microsoft Access, and that's actually going to be the one that we've finished up from Module 1. So I am looking for the Apply Your Knowledge Friendly Janitorial Services, and this is the one you worked on in Module 1. So if you're going to do this one, you have to make sure that you're finishing up the updated one that you completed in Module 1. So I'm going to open that, enable content, and this is what the janitorial services should look like. So it says step 1 on page 114 is to create a query for the client table. Okay, so I'm going to go to create query, and I'm going to use the client table, and I'm going to add that, and I'm going to close this, make that a little larger, and it tells me to use the client number. Double click on that, client name, amount paid, and current due. To the design grid, and we want to find all clients whose names start with the letter B. So I'm going to go down to criteria, and I'm just going to put in B, and I'm going to put in asterisk for anything that starts with B, and I am going to run that, and it should show me all clients that begin with the letter B. I'm going to save that, so I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to save this object as Apply to Step 1 Query. And so now I've created this query over in my navigation pane. Okay. Now it says that it wants me to create a query for the client table. So I'm going to close this one out. Create query. And I am going to select client and close this. And this time I'm going to select client number, client name, amount paid, and supervisor number. To the design grid, and it wants me to sort the records in descending order by amount paid. So I'm going to go here in this sort under the amount paid, and I'm going to select descending. It also wants me to add the criterion for the supervisor number that allows the user to enter a different supervisor each time the query is run. Okay, so I go under the supervisor number, okay, and I'm going to put in a parameter query that says enter number. Okay, and I'm going to run this. And when I do, it tells me to enter the supervisor's number. Okay, put in whatever, and it's going to pull that back. Supervisor number 114. Okay. Now if I go back to design view, and I'm going to take this out just for a second, and if I run this now without that parameter in there, it's going to show all the supervisor numbers. Okay, so to go back to design view, again to create the parameter query, You just put that in brackets, and as I run this, it will prompt me for the supervisor number. Put in a different number, click OK. I don't have a supervisor number there. Okay, I can go back to design view here, and I can I'm gonna run that again. I'm going to actually take this out so we can look at the supervisor numbers. Notice they're 103, that's a number. So let's pull all the ones off and have it prompt us for 103. So I'm going to go back to design view, put that back in, enter number under supervisor number. I'll run it, put in 103, click OK, and it pulls back all the ones for 103. So that's how you create a parameter query. Now it wants me to save this as apply to step 2 query. So now I have that query there with the parameter in there. Number 3 says create a query for client table and add the client number, name, and due date. And we're going to add a criteria where the current due amount is less than 500. So I'm going to close this one out. I'm going to go to create query, use client, and this time I'm going to add client number, client name, current due, and I have all of those in my design grid. I'm going to run this. Notice that it pulls them all back, but it wanted me to show the ones that were less than 500. So I'm going to go back to design view, and in the current due, I'm just going to say less than 500. Notice that Access puts in a lot of the special characters for you and so forth, so you don't have to do that. So this time when I run it, it's going to run all the ones that are less than 500. I am going to right click here and go save, and it wants me to save this as apply to step 3 query. And click OK. And I'll close that out. So notice I have all those queries over here now, steps 1, 2, and 3. This time it tells me to create a query that joins the supervisor and client tables. That way we can pull data off of multiple tables. So this time I'm going to go back to query, and I'm going to select client and supervisor. And close this. I'm going to move this one over here. And that shows you how the tables are linked together. Remember the primary and foreign keys from our database design. So I'm going to add the supervisor number, last name, and first name from the supervisor table. And I'm going to add the client number and client name from the client table. It wants me to sort the records in ascending order by client number within supervisor number. So I'll go under client number, and I'm going to sort that in ascending. So I have it sorted in ascending order by client number, but it also wants me to do it within the supervisor number. So I'm going to select ascending there, and I'm going to run it, and now it has it in ascending order by supervisor number and by client number, and it should match up to figure 2-88 on page 115, and it does. Excuse me. It wants me to save this query as supervisor client query, and click OK. And so now we have that query as well. Now it wants me to create a report, and it's going to use that query. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and go create, and I'm going to create a report, and it wants me just to use the supervisor client query. So I'm going to select all those fields, click next. Don't want to add any grouping, doesn't ask me to do that, so I'm just going to click finish, and there is the report. A couple different ways you could have done that. That's the way I did it. And I'm going to save this as supervisor client report. Go back to report view, and remember that you can come in and rename, go into properties or whatever here. So I'm going to come in here and rename this. I just right click. Uh-oh, can't do it while it's open. Let me close that. Let me close this. And I want to save that as supervisor client report, not query. So I'll just come in here and rename that as report and hit enter. If I want to pull that up, I can double click on it at any time. That's pretty much all there was for this one. If you have any other issues, please be sure and email me. Make sure that you are working with the database that you work with in Access Module 1 if you're trying to work with the same janitorial services in Module 2. Also, make sure you work through the practice lab for Module 2, which begins on page 66 and goes all the way through page 113. If you'll work through that, it'll really help you on completing these end of chapter labs. Okay, thanks a lot. And remember, we have the whole class next Wednesday to work on these together. Please don't let them upset you or get stuck on anything, and I will help you finish these. Remember that we're just practicing with these for fun, and I'm just looking for a good faith effort on these. Okay, thanks a lot and have a great week.